Welcome to My Cousin Innie, where we talk about Severance from Apple TV. I am Jamie G, and I'm here with the co-host, the man, the magnum of the Mills, to talk about the eighth episode of season two, Sweet Vitriol.
Oh man, and so sweet it is. On one hand, it's like, yay, a shorter episode of Severance, so maybe it won't take so long to talk about. But yeah, that's probably not the case because Severance is what it is, and this is My Cousin Innie, presented by Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. You can find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff. Same place on the web, dudeswatchstuff.com. We try to keep it nice and easy to remember, just like the flaps. FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. It's so simple. You can do it after a hint of ether, although do not try that at home.
From this point forward, there will be full-on spoilers for all episodes of Severance, as well as any articles, podcasts, interviews, you name it. It's up for grabs here. This is your first and final warning. And if you don't know, now you know.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
We always begin by acknowledging the folks who made the episode. Mills, give credit where it's due. Who put this thing together for us?
Like you said up top, this is Sweet Vitriol, Season 2, Episode 8 of Severance, the 17th overall episode of the show, originally released March 7th, 2025. Once again, directed by Ben Stiller. This is his 10th directing credit on Severance. Written by Adam County and Casey Perry. This is the first written by credit for both of them on the show. Guest stars include James LaGrosse as Hampton, Jane Alexander as Sissy Cobell, Jerry Stahl as Magnus, Emma Troke as Dot, and Claire Coulter as Rose. The short plot synopsis is discoveries are made. Jamie G, we made some discoveries here. They dropped the bomb on us at the end like it was a Funk Flex mixtape. Cobell invented Severance. I mean, that kind of overshadows everything in the episode, even the just everyone doing a bit of ether the whole time. We're doing a Fear and Loathing in thing, I guess. So it is what it is. I enjoyed this one, but it was not quite what I was expecting. How about yourself, man? What are your overall thoughts here on Sweet Vitriol?
It was not what I was expecting at all. We had talked about on previous episodes, and you kind of called it wanting that Cobell flashback. This is not, I did too, but I didn't think it would be like this. So we kind of got it, but we didn't get the parts of the background that I really wanted. I thought visually it was really cool just to have a whole episode almost outside. With that outside backdrop and stuff. I thought that was really cool. Kind of reminded me of like a northeastern, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Providence, Massachusetts, Maine type ocean little tiny community there.
If you want to
So
name the whole East Coast, you're only about three short. You can keep going if you want.
yeah, I keep going, but it's the northern coast here, man. I definitely just that whole region up there definitely reminded me of that. So visually looked great. Great job, Ben Stiller. A pretty bold choice here, I think, Mills. I mean, obviously that's a massive bombshell, kind of hidden in a weird episode. You get it late, and it's like holy shit type moment. It just felt like, man, we just had one of these with the Gemma thing. So I think that's probably the downside to it. But overall, I thought it was awesome, and I think it was an angle. I think I'm probably higher on it than most because we got hit with this very interesting backstory and then this incredible angle that I did not see coming at all. It was a total jaw dropper for me.
I was not expecting this, although I was expecting to have this type of Cobell episode. I just, again, once she declined that first call from Devin, my literal thought was, man, the ball's on them. They're going to do this two episodes in a row, kind of making us hang in the lurch here. Does appear at the end that Mark and Devin have made some moves on reintegration. We'll probably save that for our speculation station here at the end of the episode. But overall, again, Ben Stiller does it here, man. This is absolutely gorgeous, very cool, very well acted. I think my only knocks on it are I wanted a little bit more, both in length and just maybe meet one more character, get one little flashback or something. It's an episode I definitely enjoyed, as I've enjoyed every episode of Severance, but it was missing, like, it was like a good dish, but it was missing that one little side or one little ingredient. And I will knock it a little bit just for coming again right after Chikai Bardo here. A little bit of a letdown, and I think that episode does similar things to what this episode tries to do, and it just does it in a different way, and maybe a way that was a little bit more fun and accessible and not as dark and dreary, to be perfectly honest with you, man. You hear Hunter Thompson talk about the man in the depths of an ether binge, and here you see a town in the depths of an ether binge, and it is just downright ugly, man. Next to the one little
Yeah.
cafe they have, there's just a rusted out whip. I'm pretty sure when Cobell parks there, she just stops the car in the middle of the street. She doesn't appear to park in a spot or anything. She just leaves the car in the middle of the street because there's probably no one else coming. Like it's wild how far down that town is. So certainly not what I was expecting in an episode. Very cool aspects to it. I can see a little bit why it would be kind of divisive with the fan base, but I think a lot of that is Cobell being the inventor of Severance blew a hole in a lot of theories for people. So I think there is a little bit of
Yeah.
resentment for that. And I never mind being proven wrong, man. The whole point of having theories is to have some fun with it. It's a brain exercise. You imagine all the other things the show could be. It's only going to be the one thing it ends up being, but there's nothing wrong with having your own little, head cannon out there and having some fun with it. But you can't take it personally when the show goes another way, I think. So I had none of those problems on my end, at least.
Yeah, me neither. Look, I that's part of the fun, right? I mean, yeah, you want to be right, but at the same time, it's fun to get something that you didn't see coming. And I think that's the coolest part about this episode is I had no way, not even close on my radar, wasn't on any bingo cards. There was no way I would have been saying that Cobell invented this whole thing and like this. It just no, right? And so I think it's so cool that we got it. We got it in this very dreary way. It almost didn't allow you to get the big wow moment that you should have because it's just so this really dark depressing thing, and there's this whole thing with Cobell and her mom and all this stuff, and you're trying to figure out who all the and then bam, you get hit with it. So again, it's pretty cool how they did it. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, I don't like that Cobell. Let's see where they go with it. They've done good enough here for me to trust them
Right. I think
going
the
forward.
show, the writers, everyone has earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. I
I think
have
so
the
too.
utmost confidence in them to land the plane here. This episode does nothing to shake it for me. And I think if you go back, you can probably find, a little bit of a building they did in there, a little bit of foreshadowing with Cobell from season one. Remember, she knew how to pull the chip out of dude's head. She kind of had some technical conversations. Not incredibly surprising to have it, work out that way, but it does open up a whole new world going forward. I think she can probably do more than just help Mark get to the Innie cabin. Let's just put it that way. Again, we'll save the speculation for the end, but it does open up a lot of new avenues, and that almost changes the whole dynamic of the show. To be perfectly honest.
It really does. And you know what else, Mills? I'm gonna have to call you out here because I don't think that our devices are the only things listening to us. Before episode 7, you, our very own Magna Mills, you predicted that we were going to get an entire episode dedicated to Mrs. Cobell. But after episode 7, you said that the show, there's no way they could have the balls to go there after an episode almost entirely dedicated to Gemma's backstory. How you feeling about it, man? I know we danced around it and kind of our opening remarks, but do you like the fact that they actually did it, or are you not a fan of the placement here?
I would have flopped them. If you were going to go back to back, I would have put this one in front of Ja'Kai Bardo, and I think it works a little bit better, especially because Cobell has been off screen for so long, more or less for the entire season, outside of a handful of scenes. I don't have a problem with it. I always like when shows take chances. Even if they don't work for me, I'd rather them take a big swing and miss than not try to hit for the home run and just try to, hit singles and keep everybody happy because that generally never ends with the most entertaining version of the show you could get. Overall, it's not really surprising that most of the critics like this one, but the fan reaction definitely divisive if you go on the message boards, especially over on the subreddits for this. It's at a 6.7 on IMDb. Season 1 had 2 episodes at 7.7. That was the lowest of any other. And in season 2, the lowest was the season premiere at 8.2. So this is, I mean, noticeably down. It's not quite going from Caddyshack to Caddyshack 2 or from The Sting to The Sting 2, but this is a significant drop off. And I don't think there's ever been a bad episode of Severance, but I think at minimum this deserves to be at least in that high 7, low 8 range with kind of the other low hanging fruit. How about yourself?
I'm with you on the fact that I don't mind when shows take chances, and we've kind of been talking about it this whole season. It seems like we've had this conversation maybe 3, 4 times, where it's like, yeah, they took a little bit of a chance here, but it paid off, right? I'm willing to bet that this will likely pay off. I think it, like you said, it just opens up so many possibilities. Not that it was starting to close in on us, but we were starting to learn more and I don't know, it kind of felt like maybe we needed something to just kind of expand. We're talking about another season, maybe 2 of this. they move pretty fast in this show. We've learned a lot here in season two. I think that maybe they needed something to open up with, to open up the storyline a bit. Yeah, putting them right together, I probably would have sandwiched them. I'm a big fan of the old sandwich, right? One, a normal, a regular episode, and then the other one on the other end here. So Oreo them up a little bit is how I would have did it. But I'm also not, sadly, I'm not the one making the show, so I don't have a say in
Well,
it. But
technically, it was an Oreo. It was just a double stuff.
it was a double stuff. It was double stuff. That's true.
I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You see a little more milk with the double stuff. That's all.
I'm okay with it, but I also understand the fan kind of outcry here a little bit where they're like, that's not cool. You shouldn't have did that. I mean, it was, it's a lot to unpack now, two full episodes in a row of it without really getting anything with what's going, it's like it's a big move. Not many shows do that. But on the other hand, I kind of respect it, dude. So I guess I'm a little column A, little column B, typical Jamie G. But I can understand why people would be upset about this. I'm not as upset as kind of the way the market reacted, but I can understand why.
Yeah, I would say the harshest end of it, people referred to it as a filler episode. And there's a filler episode by definition has no impact on the plot. There's no way you can say this episode had no impact on the plot of the show going forward. It's not going to be one that you can just forget about, because they were trapped in a room during a hurricane and they played some silly games or something to pass the time. Like this is far from a filler episode. So I think that criticism is certainly unwarranted. And once again, how good looking was this, man? They actually went to Newfoundland and Canada, Labrador, Canada, Bonavista, Newfoundland. They talked about that a little bit on the inside the episode, but Ben Stiller kills it here, man. Once again,
Yeah,
just props all the way around. It looks and it sounds fantastic. And we get the one needle drop I liked when Hampton goes to meet Cobell to Old Factory. It's Where Do We Go From Here by Charles Bradley. And Charles Bradley, if you might, the name sounds familiar. It's because he did the theme from Barry, Change the World. So
nice.
that's it's all coming back around to when we did the Barry podcast. So I don't think we're getting the sequel we kind of needed from that there, but it is what it is. We'll have to keep making do with Severance. And again, just shout out Ben Stiller. He's directing the finale as well. So very, very, very excited. But first, we have to get through 8 and then to 9, and then we'll finally get to 10. Salt's Neck itself, we saw that sign in the previous episode that, she was almost 300 miles away. I didn't think that's where she was actually going, but it didn't really surprise me when we saw the sign of her kind of coming into town there. I like the concept here. The idea that Kier kind of made the town. We've seen this with these industrial towns, right, all over the Rust Belt.
Right.
Once the factory leaves, they kind of go tits up, for a lack of an easier term. One thing I'm curious about is we hear Sissy is kind of a pariah because she still keeps to the nine. I don't really know how big of the religious aspect to Kier is. If you look in the shot, I don't know if it's just by coincidence, but there is a fair number of churches for a small town that still look to be used. I think I counted at least 3 pretty significant steeples. Is there a church of Kier, I wonder? Like, do they build? Is it just within Lumen? Is it something people worship at home? That's something I'm not totally clear on.
I think they've been hinting at it really since the episode where we got them all out in the woods on the retreat. And then you see it here with Sissy a little bit with some of her comments, like, with the nine and all that. So I definitely think that there's something here. I don't know if it's its own standalone religion, but I definitely think there's some sort of belief structure wrapped up in some sort of higher power revolving around Kier. 100%. I mean, I think we've kind of seen it, and I think they keep hinting at it, but that's another domino to fall later on.
Yeah, I always kind of assumed it was more like Scientology, where they don't have churches per se, but they have centers that look more office building like and that kind of thing. So that was, I guess, where I was going with it. How long did it take you to pick up on the ether thing? Shout out to Cobell for keeping up her dental hygiene there. That was pretty good work of her,
Yeah.
although she really shouldn't just throw the bottle. Like, come on, at least recycle, man. The town's going to shit. You can't litter. But I thought the dude was hyperventilating at first, and then even when Hampton gives that dude that jar, I didn't really recognize it was ether until they went to the ether factory, and then it kind of clicked for me.
Yeah, I didn't either. I thought honestly when she's brushing her teeth, I thought he was huffing spray paint. I was waiting for him to come out and like looking like
You
cricket.
thought he was doing the
Yeah,
Charlie.
yeah, I really thought
He's
he
looking
was
for the Nightman over there.
right. I really thought he was. But it made sense as we went along. I mean, it's just once we saw the ether plant, I was like, oh, they're doing Ether. Wow. Haven't read or seen Ether since Fear and Loathing in Las
Yeah,
Vegas.
I'm just
So
picturing,
pretty cool.
Raul Duke and Dr. Gonzo just swaying down the sidewalk, kind of just
Yeah.
in the depths of an ether binge. So I'm sure there'll be a couple Fear and Loathing references to this one. Definitely love the Drippy Pot Cafe. Let me ask you, did you ever watch the show Twin Peaks?
I have not, no.
Well, long story short, in Twin Peaks, it's supposed to be like, this incredibly like, kind of, it's a weird town, but there's this very wholesome diner. Everyone loves the Double R diner. And it took me a second. I'm like, dude, this Drippy Pot Cafe is literally what the Double R would be if people were on ether. Like kind of like the evil version, your evil version, he's got the goatee or whatever. This is like the ether
Right.
soaked evil version
This
of
is the
the Double R
Wario.
diner from Twin Peaks. So yeah,
This is
yeah,
the
yeah.
Wario.
Waluigi's out there. He's out there. That's his rust bucket parked right next door. I knew right from when her and Hampton locked eyes that they knew each other. I could not figure out the relationship until she had, they referred to them as chums and colleagues from back in the day. I really like this sequence, and Cobell gets a lot done without a lot of words, right? She kind of sits down, just owning shit, like, oh, you have to buy some beers. Like, well, buy me coffee then. I
Dude,
do always
she
enjoy her confidence and that she's got no time for any of this, right? She needs to get right to it. I think the main thing is at the end of the day, Hampton was just shocked all she wanted was a ride. I think he was looking for a bigger ask than that, probably, right?
Yeah, but I think it also signified just how hard it was for him to go back up there to that place, right? And all the memories it brings back. He's obviously clearly avoiding it. But back to Patricia Arquette here, dude, as Cobell. She has such an intensity to her. And we saw it in season one. We really saw it early in season two with her and Helena. But man, it was back again here. She just has such an intensity around her. The way she looks, how she pauses. Like you said, she speaks so loudly with barely speaking. Such a cool character here. And yeah, I mean her presence was immediately felt soon as she went in there and really all through the episode.
Second time this season, she's had like the head-to-head car face-off thing too. We're just standing
Yeah,
there, the cars pull
the
up.
way
So I
they were
wonder if we're going to
parking.
get a
Yeah.
third. I feel like, if they're doing the rule of threes, I feel like that has to come around one more time. So did you like this concept that this is an ether factory with a lot of history? They maybe implied that that's where Kier met Imogene, like this is like a historical place. But just the idea, they were working on the floor of a factory, of an ether factory, when they were 8. And it sounds like that wasn't their first year working or something like that. I mean, that's pretty wild and probably, we'll save this a little bit for speculation, but probably why she invented Severance, right? Because who the hell wants to remember that or live that?
Yeah, I mean that's not a fun thing, and that also explains why he was like, child labor, and because let's just call it what it is, it is, and it also begs the question: Are they in America? Are there child labor laws here? Like, how are they able to get around that? Like, it just for me, it's like my brain starts wandering into other things, which we probably will never get an answer on, but I still wonder.
I just assume it's like regulatory capture. Lumen is so big, they have installed their people kind of throughout the government, or they donate enough or whatever, so everyone either looks the other way or they have an exemption. Or I mean, that's actually happening now. States are now creating exemptions so kids can go back to work in the factory. So it's I guess it's not that crazy. One thing that bothered me a touch, Cobell is really worried that someone is watching Sissy's house, so she needs a ride. This is the whole impetus for this. But if they're watching her house and no one ever goes there, won't they report anybody who goes there? Does it really matter what vehicle she was in? That part that's the one part that I think they were just trying to loop Hampton in. I mean, she's all this bakery. What was she going to do if he said no? She's just going to drive herself there anyway, right? Or steal a car, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and if they're watching her house, they're gonna see her as soon as she pops out of the back of the truck anyways. So it's not, it was interesting though that Drummond had called, right? So, we kind of figured that out and then but what was weird, and maybe we could talk a little bit about this predictions, the car coming at the end, she definitely ripped out the phone out of the wall. It doesn't strike me that Sissy had a cell phone or an iPad or something. So, curious to see how they knew. Is it satellites? They can just see everything from space? Like what curious to see.
Hey, they were there a few hours because she falls asleep for a minute. You watch, that's actually another beautiful shot
She
with the sun
does.
as it kind of goes down in that room. So if they were there 8 hours, perhaps at that point, maybe someone drives, like maybe it's not constant surveillance. Everyone checks it out a couple times a day kind of thing. You know what I mean? And someone was just happened to come by for their one pass through or something like that. They're
I
there
could
long
see.
enough. I can probably buy that. Maybe long enough for a satellite. Now that the car's been parked there for a while, that truck. If it's sitting there for 6 hours, then maybe it drew attention. You know, because satellites you can't see everywhere on Earth. You know, Earth is a globe, so it depends on where the satellites are located. I'm assuming they probably have access to a lot of a network, but real time satellite covering the entire globe is pretty expensive. What did you think about Sissy herself? I do like the conflict they set up with her in the rest of the town, really portraying her as a true believer. And you get the impression that her and Cobell had a very, despite the fact that she's her aunt, had a very, very combative relationship. When she smacks Cobell, like that just, I don't think that's the first time, right? Like I'm imagining, Cobell was under 10 years old, working in an ether factory, getting smacked around at home. Again, it for someone like that, Severance sounds good, kind of.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It kind of told you a lot about just how horrible it was. He kind of painted her as the monster that she is, right? Kind of up and all alone before he agreed to drive Cobell there. So it was cool that you kind of got this image, and then I thought she delivered. It wasn't exactly like misery, scary, but it was also like this is an old lady she reminded me of like some, like very strict, like nothing
Matronly is the
matters
word you're
except
looking
her.
for, like an old
Yeah,
hospital matron, the old lady, like a Nurse Ratchet type or something like that.
yeah,
Again, the contrast is nice. I think this is a, no, I don't know if it's the most valid complaint. Again, you mentioned drum and call. We're not quite sure what he said. I don't really believe that Cobell is going to be forgiven. So I don't know that it really, matters too much. But the whole bit where she tries to get in her mom's room and can't find the key and then just goes upstairs and finds the key anyways. I can see like that in an episode that's the shortest runtime like this. I could see people being a little bit like that was a little bit extra. It was very interesting to see all of the things in her room, in her mother's room, all that stuff. And we got the payoff for the respirator thing. Again, I think people were building more into that than it was. It was going to have greater significance. Here, it was just
yeah,
personal, right? It was pulled out of her mom's throat and she died and she missed her mom. And that's all it is to it. It's an emotional touchstone, not part of a greater theory. So I think there are probably some people disappointed by that too. But it made sense to me.
yeah. I think so too. And I thought the shot of her kind of plugging it in, breathing it, and grieving. We haven't really seen a lot of emotion out of Cobell, so it was kind of interesting to see her grieve and cry and go through that whole process of breathing on the ventilation tube like her mother did. So it kind of was like, okay, she's human. She's not a robot working for Lumen. So that was kind of cool to see too.
And very sad. The whole thing of
Very
her
sad.
lying on that bed there, just and then Charlotte Hampton coming in and just gets in the room. She's, we got to go. You can't blame him, right? He's probably, it really is cold. He's been sitting out there for a long
Out there for
time.
hours. Yeah.
But then I did not expect him to go full towel when he walked into the room. And he just gets in, he sits down, you wait for him to say something. He's kind of like, want to get high?
Yeah. Right away. It's basically what he's like, which also led me to believe that this blew my mind though. I was like, all right, not the first time they've done that. But then I'm like, when she said she hadn't done it since she was 8, I'm like, dude, she was doing ether at 8 years old and she invented all this shit?
Right. And it
Whoa.
sounds like not even doing like, they were working in an ether factory where they would be exposed to it anyways. But then on top of that, they were doing ether in an ether factory.
Wild.
That's like drinking rum and cokes while you're in the middle of a beer drinking contest. I mean, you can do it, but I don't know that it's necessarily advisable. She just must have brain cells to spare, I think, probably.
I think that's the other complaint a little bit is I don't know that they did enough, and maybe it was intentional, and it probably was, but I don't think they did enough throughout the first season and 8 episodes in season 2 to really let you believe that she was some sort of brilliant or even had the capability to do anything. So that was, I wish we would have gotten just a little bit more because I think it would have been like, oh, because I just couldn't see it at all, which was cool because it was a total surprise. And then it's like, oh, now it makes sense. Whereas I don't know that we've gotten anything to be like, yeah, I could see that. And it's fine. I'm sure we will, and I'm sure it's going to work itself out. But I think that's a valid complaint for people too.
I will say that if you go back and shout out somebody on Reddit, I don't remember who compiled out this, but there are a couple of subtle hints. Like she says that PD was showing signs of reintegration before everyone else. The board's like reintegration is not possible, and she was the only one who kind of recognized it and said it could happen. Then she removes his chip, which again, you probably had to have some idea what you're doing. You know, Ragabi knows, but she's the one who implanted it, so that makes sense. And then also she tells you that she's going to run tests on PD's chip after she took it out. And then he kind of talks to her with some very specific full synaptic coupling. Like it sounds like she, you know what I mean? He talked to her like a peer who had the technical background. But again, I don't know that he knows. I mean, who actually knows this, right? I mean, hardly anybody can actually know it. I guess it certainly doesn't seem like Ragabi knows. You know, I think she would probably, refer to her a little bit different. And it also adds a little bit of context. Remember, she steals that candle from Mark's house and brings it to the wellness session with Mrs. Casey to try to like, you know what I mean, see if like she can get them to kind of break through. But and she's almost disappointed when it doesn't happen. Or she has it explains why she has a greater interest in Severance itself, I guess. Why
It
she was
definitely
so
does.
gung ho to be in charge of the Severance floor, right? So at
Yeah,
least that I think,
I
for the most
agree.
part, tracks.
Yeah, that does. I think there would have been a better response to it because I think people, reading through some of the things, people are upset because it's like, well, she's not worthy of, and it's like that's kind of been a general feel. And not, I'm not saying she is or isn't, but I wish they would have maybe just done a little bit more there throughout. But it does make more sense as to why she was so invested in Mark and now and then learning that it's Cold Harbor and then learning just her whole thing with the whole Severance floor like that she must see it through. All that now starts to track from earlier this season.
Other than the respirator bit, we did get a little confirmation here about the Wintertide Fellowship. That tracks with what we know about Ms. Huang. That was kind of speculated. So I think that, even though it seemed pretty obvious, I think that theory absolutely tracks. I never really thought that Jamie Egan invented Severance. I always kind of figured it was going to be somebody else. I mean, it's a big company. How many times unless they founded the company after making the invention, it doesn't really work that way usually. Usually it's somebody who worked for the company. So I guess I was surprised it was Cobell, but not really shocked that it didn't wind up being one of the Egans themselves. And then we've obviously see her kind of go digging for the plans. But before that, we get a little background on Sissy. We see a plaque, and she was the matron of the year there. The actual plaque says she was the quarterly striver, fourth quarter Eurovision youth apprentice matron Celestine Sissy Cobell. So that makes sense that she was not only related, that's Cobell's aunt, but also was probably in charge of her, right? So it's not 100% clear what the relationship was between her and the mother. My question is, Cobell finally finds the notebook, right? And again, why would you not lock that basement or whatever? But you could kind of dig into that for days. Why does she show it to Sissy? Is it just to prove to her that she invented it? I don't know that that's a good strategic move because she has to know she's going to tell Lumen, right? So unless I didn't quite get that. And then she tries to burn it too. So she almost lost all of her leverage as well.
She felt the need to validate herself to somebody that and I think in doing that, what it tells me is that Sissy still holds so much power over her, and still holds so much sway, and she still cares so badly to have her acceptance, even though she hates her. And so I think I think it was kind of poking at that
It's a
family
reaction to
dynamic.
her saying how disappointing she turned out, right?
Yeah.
After getting the call from Mr. Drummond and hearing that it's not working out with Lumen, because she is the ultimate kind of true believer here. So again, I think that makes sense. But on another level, if Cobell actually has a plan, at this point she doesn't know about Mark being reintegrated, so I don't know if it would track perfectly. But maybe she wants to shake Lumen up. She hasn't played this card before. She does say that they told her that she would be excommunicated basically if she ever mentioned this. I mean, can she leak it to the press? Can she bring it to a competitor? We can save that probably for speculation. There's a lot of things that she could probably do with it. And one thing that I think, if you believe it, makes the earlier scene when Cobell first gets there play differently. Do you really believe that Cobell's mother removed her own respirator tube? I don't think Sissy had any reason to lie, right? For whatever she is, she doesn't really seem to be a liar. I feel like she would feel that's blasphemy or against the rules, kind of, or against the nine, whatever you want to say. So I'm inclined to believe her probably. How about yourself? Do you think she was telling the truth on that?
I think she was, and even earlier when she said, she saw the look of relief in her eye, she didn't come out and say I removed it. So she kind of felt like she kind of came clean at the end, but she did it in a way that would purposefully hurt, obviously calling her a coward and this and that.
Right. It makes the slap track a little bit more, I think. If
Yeah.
she's really kind of like my sister killed herself, because you have to believe, no matter what her belief system is, she still have to love her sister, right? And to a certain extent, love her niece as well, even though they might have a more combative relationship. Other than that, I don't think there's much, you see Cobell's yearbook. I don't quite understand at the end, why does Hampton stay? Like, couldn't they both just get in the truck again? That part I didn't quite get.
The only thing that I took from it was he was going to tend to whoever was coming and basically stall them or basically whatever, deal with it. That's what I took away
That
from it.
makes sense, I guess. I don't know. Again, we'll save it for speculation. It makes me wonder whether we'll ever see him again or whether he even lives past that moment. We may never find out, but I thought it was an interesting way to leave it. And then, obviously Cobell leaving and she finally picks up the phone. And it does sound like because Devin kept calling, and this was taking place over the course of, let's call it at least 12 hours. So she had enough time to call, talk to Mark, call again, call again. It does sound like they have a plan. And again, we'll save the back end of this for speculation. But the idea that Mark is willing to talk to her now has to mean that's big.
I thought that was probably one of the hugest things here because that told me that Mark and Devin are now aligned and working together, and he is on board with bringing her in. Because remember, this whole idea Devin floated, Mark was still passed out. She floated that to Ragabi just as Mark was passed out. Mark being up and now it's like, okay, well, now he's a part of this, and it's the Devin and Mark show. So I thought that was a big little nugget too. Again, buried behind all the other craziness of this episode, but I did think that was a big nugget.
Yeah, Devin specifically says, we want to try something else, which implies that her and Mark have had a conversation and come to a decision. And so the fact that now we were wondering, like, what could Cobell really do without access to Lumen? The fact that she's the inventor of Severance, again, the range of possibilities is now wide open. And before we move on here, one really fun thing, obviously, you see you get the annual reminiscences. Of course, they couldn't just call it a yearbook. But do you know that Cobell went to the Myrtle Egan School? Take a wild guess what their nickname was. This is so great.
The Myrtle Egan School. I'm just gonna say, oh man, I'm just gonna take a guess here and say the Wolves,
Their school name, according to the reminiscence book, was the Myrtle Egan Fighting Kids.
the Fighting Kids. Yeah, that's way better than
That's
the Wolves.
that's I yeah that's just that's so Lumen, right? I don't even know what else to kind of say about it. That is literally just so Lumen.
It's very, very Lumen.
And Cobell, did she ride in the back? This is more of a Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back reference, but did she have to ride in the back of the truck 'cause she didn't offer roadhead? I mean, that's what happens if you don't make with the head.
I, I thought it was funny that they went through all that trouble and then she just popped out and walked right in, and then she just gets in the truck and drives off at the end. It's like, okay, she rode it was a bumpy ride too. It wasn't exactly, I mean, she was banging
Yeah, he
around.
hits that one bump, and I think Hampton was kind of like, all right, she deserved that one. He kind of looks back and he almost gives like a tiny little smile.
Yeah, yeah, there's no
I
smoke
don't think
there.
he hit it on purpose, but I think he felt like maybe she deserved that a little bit, just a little something, something there. And maybe the hardest thing to believe out of all of this is that they invented Severance. Mrs. Cobell invented Severance. She could invent an electric toothbrush. She's still doing it the old school way. Come on.
I know.
In a season that's so much focus on dentistry, we can't get an electric toothbrush.
It's not a bad request, man. But I am proud of her for doing, for at least keeping up with her personal
Yeah,
hygiene.
just don't throw the plastic bottle out after. That's all
Yeah,
we're
there's no
asking.
need for that. There was still
There was
water.
still water in it, I think.
All right, all right. Well, let's save everything else here for our speculation station at the end of the episode after the award tour for Sweet Vitriol. First up, we got our favorite alternate episode titles. Mills, Sweet Vitriol doesn't necessarily roll off the tongue. Did you find something a little bit better here?
I got a couple of alts here. Sweet Vitriol does sound more like an album title or maybe a song title than an episode title. So we got our top three. We're going to start with three, work our way to one. And maybe this is a little bit of a gag, but it is extremely important within the lore of Severance. So how about number three, alternate title, The Notebook? The Notebook is extremely important here. There is no Rachel McAdams, no Ryan Gosling yet. The Notebook, highly important to Severance. Number two, I just like the way this felt, and I think you get this impression both from the town, how they feel about Lumen, and now how Cobell feels about Lumen, malice and resentment. There's a lot of resentment, and there is malice, and there will be some revenge. So that's what we're going with as our number two alternate episode title. And at number one, you got to work it in somehow. There were a lot of ether puns, but we just went with Into the Ether because it can both be the kind of nebulous quality of what the ether is and also the effects of ether. And we legitimately went to the ether factory, so there is a lot of ether. Once again, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas would be very proud. So those are our top three alternate episode titles: The Notebook, Malice and Resentment, and Into the Ether.
All three, I will add, are better than Sweet Vitriol. Just my personal take. Stop number two on the award tour is our favorite quotes. Mills, you're up first here, man. Give me your favorite quote or just quip, just exchange here from the episode.
We're going to go with a little shorty going to be a thug here right when they arrive at Sissy's where Cobell calls Hampton out.
You're higher than a bearded vulture.
Tell her to drop dead for me.
Higher than a bearded vulture. I've not heard that one before. So anytime I hear a good, I've been to a lot of colleges too. I've seen a lot of college stuff back in the day. Never heard that one. And the way Cobell delivered it was just oh so perfect. How about yourself, man? Favorite quote from the episode?
That was a great one. Does it just me or does Cobell have a little accent here? It felt like there was a little like I wouldn't say masshole New Englander accent, but it felt like a
She's doing.
little.
I think she's putting on something. She had it in season one too. It's always been.
Yeah,
I think she's trying to go with an indeterminate accent that you can't
yeah,
quite tell like exactly where it's from. I think deliberately would be my guess.
yeah. She got a little something going on. For me, man, I'm gonna go just with the Hampton and Cobell here. Shocker.
How much trouble are you in?
Enough.
She's so intense, dude. Like it was, he got it. He was like, I think that's what allowed him to agree to do it.
That's saying more with less. She says enough. What she's really saying is, do you think I would actually be here asking you this right now if I wasn't in a shitload of trouble? That's
Right.
she crammed all of that into enough. So that's pretty amazing. That's a hell of an acting job.
Yeah. Enough said.
Ah, that was clever.
Next, we got our favorite scene or moment from Sweet Vitriol, episode 8, season 2. Mills, I'm going to go first here. I got to go the final confrontation between Mrs. Cobell and Sissy, the grand reveal, in front of the fireplace. You find out the big news here around Cobell and her journal entry and her notebook of inventing severance and everything. And then Sissy's reaction to it. That was just to me, I don't know how you can't go, how you can go anywhere else. To me, that's the big moment.
You're not wrong because I was going to go with that as well, but for the sake of mixing it up, I'm going to go with the scene where Hampton and Mrs. Cobell meet up at the old factory. I enjoyed that one, a little bit shorter, not quite as much heft to it, but you already used that one, so that would be it. But we're not going to double up here, so I think both very good. Yours is better, but you got to go
I
first, right?
went
It's like getting
first.
the ball first
Yeah.
in overtime, man.
Ooh, that hurts. It's time to hand out the major hardware, starting with our episode MVP.
Well, Jamie G, I think this one is going to be pretty easy, but for the record, thus far this season, I've gone with Dylan, Milchek, Mark, Irving, Dylan, Helly, and Gemma. No surprise going with Mrs. Cobell here. I'm going to guess you're going to do the same, but for the record, you've gone with Milchek, Helena, Dylan, Irving, Milchek, Mark, and Gemma. Am I right? Are you going with Mrs. Cobell?
I was so tempted to go Hampton, but yes, I am going to go with Mrs. Cobell. I think
Yeah,
that's,
Hampton would be two. Sissy would not be two. Hampton would be two. I will say that.
yeah. The final stop here on our award tour is our episode grades. We are grading each episode on a scale of 0 to 100 cure coins, 100, of course, being perfection. I'm up first here, Mills. I'm giving it 90, and I'm giving it 90 cure coins. And I know people are gonna be like, Jamie G, you're just you what they're gonna yell at me and whatever because they don't agree. That's fine. You don't have to agree with me. I'm at 90 simply because it was a massive, and I mean massive, earth-shattering reveal here with Cobell, and now her perceived alignment with Mark and Devin. It changed the entire dynamic of the show just like that. The entire dynamic, everything I thought, everything, it changed the entire dynamic. And for that, coupled with visually how awesome it was, just kind of some of the sensitivity of the background that you get with Cobell here. I know it's not everything we wanted, but all that combined here and just the scenery and everything, I got to give it 90 cure points.
And for you, that makes it your, I believe, third highest episode of the season. You went 83 coins, 84, 86, 94, 88, 89, 90. So you almost have a straight going, and you have 88, 89, 90, 91. So you're going to need an 87 or a 92 in episode 9 to get there to make your straight. Thus far this season, from episode 1 onward, I've gone 85 coins, 85 coins, 87, 93, 87, 88, 94. I'm going to be kind of mid-range with this one. I am docking a little bit because I wanted a little more, and I'm not wild about the placement. Very much enjoyed the episode itself. I don't think there's ever been a bad episode of Severance. It's not even my least favorite of the season. I'm going to kind of put this one just above the first 2 episodes, so I'm going to go with 86 cure coins for Sweet Vitriol. I think that's about right for me. Again, if this was in a different spot, if it wasn't coming right after Ja'Kai Bardo, if it was like 42 minutes long, we got one more little thing tucked in there, I think I'm probably edging up into the 90s, but I'm going to stick at 86. Jamie G is at 90, so that averages out to 88, which is still a damn good episode of Severance.
One hundo. We're almost done here right now. The train, though, it's pulling into speculation station. We're closing out the episode by discussing our favorite theories, questions, predictions, all the good stuff. Mills, go ahead and get us started by telling us about the next episode, episode 9.
It is titled The After Hours. The short plot summary is Mark and Devin team with an ally. Helly investigates further. This is directed by Uta Brieswitz. She directed season 2, episode 6, Attila, and written by Dan Erickson, as is the series finale. So we have the showrunner putting the proverbial pen to paper for the final 2. I will note that almost all of the predictions we made after episode 7 are still going to hold here, with the exception of the Mark and Devin stuff, because we don't get anybody else in this episode. So if you want, check the comments. We'll put a link to the previous predictions in there. But everything we thought about Irving and Dylan and Helly from the previous episode still pretty much holds, because we didn't see any of them here. We're going to be pretty heavy Cobell centric. Let me just ask you, we getting any of these people again this season? Hampton, Sissy, or will we see Saltneck again?
Sadly, I don't think we'll get back to Salt's Neck. I don't think we'll see Sissy, but I'm gonna say yes on the boy Hampton. I think he's gonna do one more favor for Cobell.
A theory I think was pretty common, but I saw someone on the internet who gave it some more context. I do not remember who did it. Shout out to you if you're the originator of the theory. I think at this point it's becoming kind of obvious that maybe Dieter Egan is not really Kier's twin, but maybe he was the guy that Kier was on Ether. You know, when he just kind of goes into his other personality a little bit. Somebody pointed out that Dieter could be diethyl ether, and that Kier Egan referred to this persona like, you know, when he was basically messed up on Ether. I think that makes more sense than him having a secret twin, right? I mean, I can kind of see that. I mean, I know people who just have like a second persona just when they're drinking, much less ether.
Yeah, I think it definitely tracks. It's kind of a cool way to put that together with diethyl ether there. And it would honestly, it would make a little bit more sense. I mean, the story and everything, it is way out there, and it would make more sense knowing that the person that wrote it and is telling it was on ether.
And no personal experience. We'd have to get Hunter S. Thompson in here and
Yeah.
via a seance to get that done. I mean, how? I mean, maybe Johnny Depp really did the method acting thing, so maybe he would be able to pull it off. But I think we already kind of talked about the idea that Cobell might have invented Severance just because of her horrible childhood. I think that we get some background here that she was very academically accomplished, so I think that's tracked. My question is Cobell severed at all? Does she have a chip in her? Was she the first case? Did she sever herself? You have to at least consider the possibility, right?
I don't know that we're done learning everything about Cobell. And so could that be something that she successfully reintegrated or whatever, or figured out how to flip the switch? I definitely think she could be, man. And you hinted at it throughout the episode. She had a horrible life. No wonder why she invented it. And she believes in it so much. Was it enough to do it to herself? Possibly.
Stick with Cobell. The Notebook. She just want it for herself? Is it for leverage on Lumen? Is she going to go to the press or something? Could she try to sell it to somebody else? Could she try to pursue the patent? What do you think she's going to do with this notebook now she has it?
Well, you got to think the last exchange she had with Helena was you've overestimated your contributions and underestimated your blessings. Looking back at that, now I can understand why she was so pissed off at that comment. You overestimated it. I did the whole thing, right? So I think this is all about leverage getting even. And it also makes me wonder if she'll get to the point of just completely self-destructing. I started it. I brought you into this world. I'll take you out of this world. What if she's just going to permanently end it? The
Well,
ability
that's
to sever it.
she
I
might have a
mean,
back door to the chips, right? If she's the inventor,
right.
it makes you wonder, what else is in there that maybe she put in there to prove that it's hers. I mean, we've talked. Not many people know this. Do you think Helena even knows? My guess is no.
My guess is no too, because I think her father's really the only one who knows, and I think it was buried for his benefit. Because I mean, we're getting the feel here that Cobell is significantly older than Helena, so this would have happened maybe before Helena was even born. I don't, I'm still unclear on how long Severance has been a thing. Is it 2 years old?
Longer than it's publicly been stated, that's for sure.
Right,
Like I think they're saying 12 years, but I think you heard 20 thrown out there by Burt or by Fields there. I
right,
think I think 20 is the stone cold minimum.
right.
Perhaps it could be even more than that. If Cobell invented this when she was very much younger, if you're going to assume she's in her 50s and she did this in her teens or something, yeah, 30 years is on the table probably. You'd have
Yeah.
to go through a period of R&D where you design the chip and start to actually use it on people. But there's a ton you can cover here. So my guess is she is going to use it for leverage in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what that will be. Do you think she is actually going to team up with the Innies, or do you think this is a feint? She's just using them kind of as a means to an end.
I think she is. I think she's not to be trusted, and I know that that's going to be something that keeps us guessing. But dude, I don't know, man. I think she's going to align here, not necessarily to help them, but the fact is that by helping them, she gets what she wants, kind of thing. So I think it's an everybody wins. But yeah, I think she is. I think she is interested in kind of setting the course right here, especially after what she just learned about from Sissy with her mom and everything. I think it's like scorched earth time for Cobell.
What if, like, we've always been attributing the importance of Cold Harbor to Gemma, but what if it's really that important to Cobell for some reason, maybe even a personal reason? Again, some fine Redditor, I believe, pointed out that the phrases Harmony, Cobell, and Cold Harbor have a lot in common. If you actually look at them and just look at the words and the letters, they are very close together, almost so close that it would be kind of weird to think it was a coincidence. Perhaps she just picked the name, but I don't know, is the final stage like maybe then she finally severs herself, like convinced that it's perfected? I don't know, but I feel like Cold Harbor might tie Gemma and Cobell together, and like that's the big secret or the big reveal or something somehow. I don't know what it is, but I feel like she's connected to it more personally than we previously would have anticipated.
Yeah, I could see that. And part of me wondered if it had anything to do with the ability to like save her mom. But I don't I think that, that ship's probably sailed here, but I don't know. I'm with you. There's something with it that she is very, very, very pot committed is probably an understatement.
And now that we know Severance was invented by Cobell, it's probably been around for a while, and Bert has been with Lumen longer. It makes me wonder, does Bert know that Cobell invented Severance? And just maybe, we heard Fields talking about, they had dinner and drinks with his old Lumen partner. Could that maybe have been Cobell?
It absolutely can. I mean, that would kind of explain more of the Bert knows more than we think kind of theory.
Right, and I think it makes more sense to tie it into a character we know than try to introduce another character who's not
I
around for some
agree.
reason now. You could
I
do it that
completely
way, but it
agree.
feels neater if it's Cobell, probably.
I think so too. And it's kind of like, instead of having an intro, it just, if you're introducing a whole new character, it better really pay off other than just filling in information like this where it was used, right? So I think that probably tracks pretty good.
Most of the Lumen people we know, the employees, aren't the right age. Cobell is. All the other people appear to be, except for Jamie, you can appear to be too young to have really been
Yeah.
there and been on that level with Bert 20 years ago. But Cobell is the one it tracks for. Even Milchek probably too young, right? If he was just starting out and you're talking like a partner in the company, not so. I think there's a decent chance it's Cobell, and maybe this does add some fuel to the fire that Cobell is the voice on the other end of the phone that Irving's calling. Maybe he's
Yeah.
never even talked to her. Maybe he's just a dead drop where you just leave messages on a machine like it's 12 monkeys or something.
Yeah.
And, we talked about a little bit about the foreshadowing about Cobell inventing Severance. Dude, if you actually look, we even talked about it in like the first episode, or maybe it was the second episode. At the end of the intro for this season, it's legitimately Cobell looming over everybody. I think I said it at one point. Like, it's kind of funny that, well, I wonder why Cobell is the one like looming over everything in the intro sequence. It was right there in front of us the whole time.
Now we know. Yeah. I guess there were clues. I guess I just wasn't smart enough to pick up on them.
And that's when the show does its job. That's what I love. When you can go
Yeah.
back and you see that they laid the track, but no one picked up on it, which is almost impossible this day and age. Like I remember a big Mr. Robot twist that they waited till like halfway through one of the seasons to reveal, and everyone figured it out like halfway through the first episode. So there's a lot of mental power going on. You have the entire power of the internet behind you. You can guess just about anything. How about Mark and Devin? What do you think the new plan is? I've seen people pretty convinced that Mark is reintegrated enough that his Audi is going to technically try to like get into Lumen, and people are convinced there's a shot in the trailer that we haven't quite seen yet that they're convinced it's Audi Mark going onto the severed floor. Do you think that's the plan? Or do you think they have something more complex in mind?
I'd love for it to be more complex than that, but I think that's kind of the end goal is Audi Mark goes in and tries to find Miss Casey or Gemma, right? And I think that's kind of his thing. I don't know what else it could be other than maybe he tries to reach out to Audi Mark tries to go in to find Audi Irving, and maybe that somehow those two connect here. Outside of that, though, those are my two best guesses at the moment.
Yeah, it is going to be a crazy sprint to the finish, I think. I am very, very excited about it. Again, we kind of already talked about the rest of our speculation for these other characters on their previous episode because we didn't see them here. Again, check the comments if you want to go back, check those out again, but we don't want to repeat ourselves. But I, despite all this, I still don't really know what's going to happen in the two final episodes, which excites me tremendously.
Yeah, same. I mean, we just got a massive curveball here, and it kind of reopened up the ability to do a million more things than what we had before, which was already a plethora. So very cool stuff here. And you know what else is cool? You are. Thank you guys a ton for checking out My Cousin Innie. We love the show. We love talking about it with you. Make sure you throw the thumb and subscribe if you haven't already. And the best part about it is send us your theories and predictions. We literally want to read those, want to talk about them, want to have a discussion. So make sure you get those to us. You can either drop a comment below or you can hit us up on our social medias. You can always enter those DMs. Mills will let you know where you can find all of our stuff.
Thanks again for checking out My Cousin Innie, presented by Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube or on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff. Same place on the web, dudeswatchstuff.com. Very simple and easy to remember, just like those flaps. FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please make sure that you hit that thumb. I'm Magna Mills. He's Jamie G. Thanks again for checking out My Cousin Innie, and we'll see you next time the elevator door opens.
Ding.
Or closes.
Also a quarter tequila, quarter rum, case of beer, pint of raw ether, and 24 amyls. Not that we needed all that for the trip, but once you get locked into a serious drug collection, the tendency is to push it as far as you can. The only thing that really worried me was the ether. There is nothing in the world more helpless and irresponsible and depraved than a man in the depths of an ether binge. And I knew we'd get into that rotten stuff pretty soon.
A House subcommittee report says illegal drugs killed 160 Americans.